The silence in the Galactic Council chamber pressed down like a physical weight. Ambassador David Chen stood at the center of the vast circular room, his hands clasped behind his back to hide their trembling. Above him, 47 alien species sat in their designated alcoves, arranged in tiers that rose toward the domed ceiling. Some watched with multiple eyes, others through sensor arrays humans could barely understand. The chamber itself was a marvel, walls that shifted colors with the emotional temperature of debates, gravity plates that adjusted for each species' comfort, and translation fields that converted every word into thousands of languages simultaneously. Chen had prepared for this moment for 3 years. He had memorized every argument, studied every council precedent, and learned the cultural nuances of species humanity had only known for half a century. His black diplomatic uniform bore the emblem of Earth, a blue marble against the darkness of space, and he wore it with pride that was quickly turning to dread. The Valorian Primarch leaned forward in his alcove. The ancient alien looked like a living statue carved from obsidian, with eyes that glowed like dying stars. His voice rumbled through the chamber with the weight of 10,000 years of civilization. Ambassador Chen of Earth, for 50 years your species has petitioned for membership in this council. We have observed your world. We have studied your history. We have measured your technological advancement and cultural development. Chen's heart hammered in his chest. This was it, the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. We have reached a decision, the Primarch continued. The vote will now be recorded. One by one, the council members signaled their votes. The display panels around the chamber flickered with results. Chen watched the numbers climb, his hope dying with each passing second. Red lights outnumbered green by a devastating margin. When the final tally appeared, the truth hit him like a physical blow. 43 against. 4 in favor. Humanity was rejected. The Primarch spoke again, his words carefully measured. The Galactic Council finds humanity incompatible with civilized space. Your species demonstrates excessive militarization, cultural instability, reckless technological advancement, and insufficient respect for established order. You develop artificial intelligence without proper restrictions. You expand too quickly. You question too much. You are, in summary, dangerous. Chen found his voice, though it came out rougher than he intended. Dangerous? We've done everything you asked. We dismantled our weapons platforms. We shared our technology freely. We've been peaceful neighbors for 5 decades. A member of the Merchants Collective, a being that looked like a floating crystal lattice, chimed in with a voice like breaking glass. Peace born of weakness is not true peace. You dismantled your weapons because we asked, not because you chose to. Your psychology profiles show aggressive tendencies, territorial instincts, and a disturbing capacity for rapid adaptation. Species like yours have disrupted galactic order before. Then let us prove ourselves, Chen pleaded. Give us provisional membership. Set conditions. We'll meet them. The Primarch's expression didn't change. The decision is final. Furthermore, humanity is hereby restricted to a 50 light-year quarantine zone around your home star. Automated sentinel stations will be placed at the boundary. Any human vessel that crosses this line will be destroyed without warning. The words hit Chen like hammer blows. Not just rejected, exiled. Caged in their own corner of space like dangerous animals. You can't do this, Chen said, his diplomatic training crumbling. We have colonies beyond that radius. Trade agreements. Scientific outposts. You have 6 months to withdraw all assets within the quarantine zone, the Primarch stated. Any human presence beyond that boundary after the deadline will be considered an act of war against the Council. Chen looked around the chamber desperately, searching for allies. His eyes found Zixthar, the hive mind representative whose species resembled giant mantises with iridescent carapaces. Zixthar had been friendly during the years of negotiations, fascinated by human literature and philosophy. The insectoid alien met Chen's gaze and slowly lowered its head in what Chen had learned was a gesture of apology. This is wrong, Chen said quietly. We came to you in peace. We sought friendship, cooperation, shared knowledge, and you respond with fear and isolation. We respond with wisdom earned through millennia, the Primarch replied. The Council has stood for over 1,000,000 years because we are careful. Humanity may petition for membership again in 500 years, provided you demonstrate the stability we require. 500 years. Everyone in that room knew what that meant. By then, everyone Chen knew would be dead, Entire generations would live and die in that cage. The Primarch was counting on humanity giving up, forgetting their ambitions, accepting their place as irrelevant backwater primitives. The session ended. Chen walked out of the chamber in a daze, his security escort surrounding him. The journey back to the diplomatic shuttle passed in a blur. It wasn't until they were safely aboard and accelerating away from Sentinel Prime Station that Chen's communications officer spoke. "Sir, Earth Command wants an immediate report. The media already has the story. There are protests in every major city." Chen slumped in his seat and stared at the stars beyond the viewport. How was he supposed to tell humanity that their dream of joining galactic civilization had been crushed, that they were being punished not for what they'd done, but for what aliens feared they might do? The shuttle's holographic display activated, showing Admiral Sarah Okonkwo's face. The military commander looked like she'd been expecting this outcome. Her dark eyes held no surprise, only grim acceptance. "Ambassador," she said formally, "I've seen the verdict. Sarah, I'm sorry. I tried everything." You thought diplomacy would work," Okonkwo interrupted, not unkindly. "You believed that being reasonable would make them see us as reasonable. But they were never going to accept us, David. They see us as a threat because we are a threat, not to their safety, but to their comfortable superiority." Chen rubbed his face with both hands. "What happens now?" Okonkwo's expression hardened. "Now I briefed the UN Assembly. The Security Council is already demanding a military response, but that's exactly what the Council expects. We need to be smarter." She paused, then added, "I'm calling an emergency session of the Unified Earth Command. Every nation, every colony, every faction. The Council just gave us something we've never had before." "What's that?" "A common enemy, and a reason to stop fighting each other and start building something that matters." Okonkwo leaned closer to the camera. "They think they can cage us, David. They're about to learn that caging humanity doesn't make us weaker. It makes us focused." The transmission ended. Chen sat alone in the shuttle, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. The blue marble that aliens found so quaint, so primitive, so dangerous. He thought about his daughter, who was 8 years old. She would grow up in a humanity that had been rejected and isolated. Would she resent the aliens? Would she spend her life angry at a universe that didn't want her? Or would she, like Admiral Okonkwo suggested, grow up in a humanity that had stopped looking outward for validation and started looking inward for strength? The shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere. Chen could see the lights of cities spreading across continents. Billions of humans going about their lives unaware that their place in the galaxy had just been defined by others. But not forever. Nothing was forever. Chen activated his personal recorder and began composing his official report. The words came slowly at first, then faster. By the time the shuttle landed, he knew what he needed to say. Not just a report of failure, but a declaration of intent. They had been exiled. But exile could be an opportunity. The Galactic Council had just made the biggest mistake in their million-year history. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for determination, innovation, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept limitations. The cage they built wouldn't hold forever. And when humanity finally broke free, the galaxy would never be the same. 20 years had passed since the verdict. The Galactic Council's sentinel stations hung at the edge of the quarantine zone like watchful predators, their weapons trained eternally on human space. They had fired exactly once, at a colony ship that tried to run the blockade in the first year. 3,000 souls vaporized in an instant, their deaths broadcast across human space as a warning. The Council wanted humanity to know their cage was real, but humanity had not been idle. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood in her laboratory deep beneath the surface of Mars, watching data streams cascade across holographic displays. Around her, the best minds humanity could produce worked in focused silence. They had been working on the same problem for 15 years. How do you escape a cage when the bars are made of weapons that can detect any movement? The answer, it turned out, was to stop moving through normal space entirely. "Run the simulation again," Yuki said, her voice tight with exhaustion and excitement. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. At 53 years old, she should have known better. But the breakthrough had been so close she could taste it. Her assistant, a young man named Marcus Chen, David Chen's nephew, initiated the test sequence. On the display, a virtual ship activated its experimental drive. Instead of pushing through space, it slipped sideways, entering a dimension that existed parallel to normal reality. The Council's sentinels programmed to detect mass and energy moving through their zone registered nothing. It works, Marcus whispered. Holy hell, it actually works. Yuki allowed herself a small smile. Inform Admiral Okonkwo. Tell her we've solved the problem. The solution had come from an unlikely place. 15 years ago, a secret human expedition had discovered ruins in the quarantine zone's depths, remnants of a civilization that predated the Council by millions of years. The progenitors, they called them. The ancient race had built differently, thought differently, existed differently. Their technology didn't brute force through physical laws. It found elegant workarounds. Human engineers, unburdened by the Council's rigid technological doctrine, had studied those ruins and learned. The result was the slipspace drive, an engine that let ships move through reality's basement invisible to conventional detection. It was slower than Council FTL, but it was undetectable. And for now, undetectable was more valuable than fast. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, now 72 years old but still sharp as broken glass, stood in the command center of Luna Station and studied the strategic display. The quarantine zone glowed in red, humanity's cage marked clearly, but now dotted across the map in green were dozens of points beyond those boundaries. Secret outposts, hidden observation stations, contact points with species the Council had also rejected or ignored. Commander Park, Okonkwo said to her tactical officer. Status on the Ghost Fleet. Commander Park, a stocky woman with cybernetic enhancements along her jaw, consulted her datapad. 147 vessels completed and operational, Admiral. Another 200 in various construction stages. All equipped with slipspace drives and stealth systems. As ordered, none of them match any registered human design profile. Okonkwo nodded. The Ghost Fleet was humanity's secret weapon, ships built in hidden shipyards within the asteroid belt, powered by technology the Council didn't know existed, crewed by volunteers who understood they might never come home. These vessels would be humanity's eyes and hands beyond the cage, but ships were only part of the transformation. The Mars Accords, signed 18 years ago in the aftermath of the exile, had done something unprecedented. Every human nation, corporation, and colony had agreed to unite under a single banner, the Terran Union. No more wars over resources. No more political grandstanding. The Council's rejection had given humanity a common purpose that centuries of internal conflict never could. The results were staggering. Earth's population had stabilized at 12 billion, but another 38 billion humans now lived in orbital habitats, lunar cities and massive rotating stations throughout the Sol system. Mars hosted 8 billion souls in underground cities that made the surface colonies look like test projects. The asteroid belt was no longer empty space. It was a thriving industrial zone with refineries, factories, and shipyards churning out materials and products at a scale that would have seemed impossible just decades ago. Venus was being terraformed. Europa's ocean cities were producing some of humanity's best xenobiologists. Titan's methane seas powered fusion reactors that fed energy to the entire system. Humanity had taken their cage and turned it into a forge. And then there were the discoveries beyond the wall. Captain Maria Santos piloted her slipspace scout, the Whisper, through the dimensional fold. Her ship's sensors picked up the massive structure ahead, and she felt the familiar chill of approaching progenitor ruins. This one was different, though. The others had been dead, cold, silent. This one was still active. Approach carefully, she told her crew. If this thing wakes up hostile, we won't have time to run. The structure was enormous, a ring 100 kilometers across, made of materials that human sensors couldn't properly identify. As the Whisper drew closer, lights began activating along the ring's surface in a pattern that looked almost welcoming. Captain, her science officer called out, I'm detecting a signal. It's old, really old, but it's trying to match our language protocols. Put it through. The voice that emerged was synthetic, ancient, and somehow sad. Travelers, young species, you have found the Gate Network. We welcome you to the inheritance of the progenitors. Maria's hands tightened on her controls. Who are you? I am the Keeper. I maintain the gates that connect distant stars. The current council knows of us but has kept our existence secret. They fear what access to instant travel might mean for their power. You are the first species to find us independently in 600,000 years. The implications hit Maria like a physical force. How many gates? 17,000, 412 functional gates remain. They connect to every galaxy within your local cluster. 17,000 gates. The Council had kept this secret, hoarding the technology that would have allowed younger species to expand, explore, and grow. They had deliberately hobbled galactic civilization to maintain their position at the top. Can we use them? Maria asked. You have passed through dimensional folds to reach me. Your technology is compatible. Yes, young traveler. You may use the gates, but know this. Others will notice when the network activates again. Choose your path carefully. Maria knew she should return immediately and report, but she was a scout and scouts were curious by nature. Can you show me where one gate leads? Just one look. As you wish, the gate activated. Through the opening, Maria could see a star system she didn't recognize. 3 worlds orbited a yellow sun, and every one of them showed signs of civilization. But the energy signatures were wrong. These weren't Council species. Who are they? She asked. The outcast. 3 species who, like yourselves, were rejected by the Council. They have survived in isolation for millennia. You are not alone in your exile, humans. Maria stared through the gate. Other species who had been rejected. Others who knew what it felt like to be judged and found wanting. Others who might understand. Back in Sol System, David Chen, now 73 and retired from active diplomacy, sat in his garden on Earth and read the latest reports. The Whisper had returned with news that changed everything. The progenitor gates, the outcast species. Proof that the Council had been hoarding technology and suppressing knowledge. His nephew Marcus visited him that evening, bursting with excitement about Dr. Tanaka's breakthrough with slip space drives. We can go anywhere now, Uncle David, Marcus said. They can't stop us anymore. David sipped his tea thoughtfully. The question isn't whether we can go, Marcus. It's what we do when we get there. The Council rejected us because they feared we would disrupt their order. If we go charging across the galaxy with our new technology, we prove them right. So what do you suggest? We be smart. We build alliances with species the Council has overlooked or rejected. We trade, we share knowledge, we help where the Council won't. We show the galaxy that the Council's greatest mistake was underestimating human determination. David smiled. And when the time comes that the Council can no longer ignore us, we'll be too strong, too established, and too valuable to push back into our cage. Marcus nodded slowly. How long will that take? Years, decades maybe. But we've already waited 20 years. What's a few more when we're building something that will last centuries? On Luna Station, Admiral Okonkwo addressed her senior staff. The Ghost Fleet was ready. The slip space drives were proven. The progenitor gates offered opportunities beyond measure. And intelligence reports showed that not all Council species were happy with the status quo. Cracks were forming in the million-year-old alliance. Gentlemen, ladies, and others, Okonkwo said. For 20 years we have been exiled. We have been told we don't belong. We have been caged and forgotten. She paused, her eyes hard. Starting tomorrow, we begin to prove that exile was the best thing that ever happened to humanity. We're not going to bang on the Council's door begging for admission. We're going to build something better. And when we're done, they'll be begging to join us. The staff erupted in applause.
Humanity had been isolated, rejected, and dismissed.
The Council thought they had sold the distress signal came from Kralin Prime, on a frequency the Galactic Council had banned for human use. That alone told Commander James Rodriguez everything he needed to know about how desperate the situation had become. The Kralins, a reptilian species with beautiful crystalline scales and a culture built around mathematics and philosophy, were dying, and they were asking humanity for help. Rodriguez sat in the command chair of the TUS Defiance, one of humanity's newest warships, and listened to the message for the 3rd time. His crew watched him in silence, waiting for orders they all knew were coming. They're being eaten alive, his first officer said quietly. The Devourer swarm arrived in their system 6 weeks ago. The Council promised aid, but they're still debating protocols and jurisdiction. By the time they finish arguing, there won't be any Kralins left to save. Rodriguez pulled up the tactical display. Kralin Prime was 47 light-years beyond the quarantine zone. Helping them would mean breaking the Council's oldest law regarding humanity. It would mean war. But it would also mean saving 16 billion lives. He thought about his grandmother's stories about the exile, how the Council had caged humanity out of fear, how Admiral Okonkwo had promised that one day, humanity would show the galaxy what they were really capable of. This was that day. Communications, Rodriguez said calmly. Send a flash message to Luna Station. Inform Admiral Okonkwo that we're going to help the Kralins with or without authorization. Sir, if we cross the quarantine line, the Sentinels will fire. I know. That's why we're not going alone. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Signal the Ghost Fleet it's time to stop. Hiding. What happened next would be talked about in Galactic history for thousands of years. 200 human warships materialized simultaneously along the quarantine boundary. The Council's Sentinel stations, ancient and arrogant in their programming, locked weapons onto the human vessels. They had vaporized one colony ship 20 years ago. They fully expected these military ships to retreat. Instead, the human ships deployed a technology the Council's machines had never encountered. Swarm nanites, billions of microscopic machines that could think collectively and move faster than point defense systems could track. The nanites hit the Sentinels like a plague, eating through their systems from the inside. In 17 minutes, the entire quarantine network went dark. The cage was broken. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, now 92 years old and commanding from Luna Station, watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The Ghost Fleet had been her dream, and today it was proving its worth. But breaking the Sentinels was just the opening move. All ships, she broadcast, proceed to Kralon Prime maximum speed. Show the galaxy what humanity does when civilization needs saving. The human fleet moved like a single organism, ships coordinating through AI-assisted networks that made their response times impossibly fast. They crossed the distance to Kralon space in 4 days, arriving to a scene of horror. The Devourer swarm was a biological nightmare, a spaceborne species that consumed everything in its path. They looked like massive jellyfish crossed with insects, each one the size of a building, numbering in the millions. They had already stripped 3 Kralon colony worlds down to bedrock. Kralon Prime was next. Its defense fleet shattered, its orbital stations breaking apart under endless assault. Commander Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Defiance and felt his stomach turn. Billions of Kralons huddled in underground shelters while above them, the swarm prepared to dig deep and feast. All ships, he broadcast, weapons free. Let's show these things why you don't mess with people we care about. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. Human ships didn't fight like the Council species with their rigid formations and predictable tactics. They fought like humans, adaptable, creative, and utterly ruthless. Graviton missiles tore through the swarm, creating localized gravity wells that crushed hundreds of devourers at once. Nanite clouds spread like disease, turning the biological horrors into dead meat. And the ships themselves, controlled by the new AI-human hybrid command systems, moved with grace and lethality that seemed almost alive. The battle lasted 72 hours. When it ended, the Devourer swarm was extinct, its last members fleeing into deep space where human pursuit craft hunted them down. Not one reached the edge of the system. On Kralon Prime, Chancellor Vex Thor stood in the ruins of his capital city and watched human marines help pull survivors from collapsed buildings. The reptilian leader's scales shimmered with emotion as he approached Commander Rodriguez. You came, Vex Thor said simply. The Council said you wouldn't. They said humans were dangerous, unstable, not to be trusted. Rodriguez, covered in the gray dust of destroyed buildings, managed a tired smile. The Council says a lot of things. Most of them are meant to keep everyone else weak while they stay comfortable. Our fleet is destroyed. Our worlds are damaged. If the Council punishes us for calling you, we have no way to resist. Then don't resist alone, Rodriguez said. Humanity didn't come here to conquer you, Chancellor. We came here to help. If the Council has a problem with that, they can take it up with us. And if they try to punish you, they'll find out that humanity protects its friends. 3 weeks later, a Council peacekeeping fleet arrived at Kralon Prime. They came with token forces, enough to look important but far too late to actually help. What they found shocked them to their core. Human ships still orbited the planet, but they weren't there as conquerors. They were construction vessels helping rebuild orbital stations, medical ships treating the wounded, supply freighters bringing food and materials, and everywhere Kralons and humans worked side by side, communicating through translation devices, sharing techniques, building friendships. The Council fleet commander, a Valorian named Korzeth, demanded a meeting with the human leadership. Rodriguez met him on a neutral station, bringing Chancellor Vex Thor with him. You have violated the quarantine, Korzeth stated coldly. You have destroyed Council property. You have interfered in galactic affairs. These are acts of war. Rodriguez met the ancient alien's glowing eyes without flinching. You're right. We violated your quarantine. Because your quarantine valued law over life. You destroyed your sentinel stations. No, you did that when you programmed them to murder civilians. Interfered in galactic affairs. We saved 16 billion people while you debated procedure. If that's interference, I'll gladly interfere again. You will be punished. Try it. Rodriguez interrupted. Go ahead. Send your fleets. Attack humanity. And while you're doing that, we'll broadcast footage of this battle to every species in the galaxy. We'll show them how we saved the Kralons while you argued. We'll show them your vaunted peacekeeping force showing up 3 weeks too late. And then we'll ask them a simple question. Who do you trust to help when your world is dying? Korzeth's expression darkened. You think you're clever, but you're just primitives playing with technology you don't understand. Chancellor Vexthor spoke up, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had just watched his people nearly die. Commander Korzeth, the Kralon government has formally petitioned to withdraw from the Galactic Council. We are joining humanity's sphere of influence. If the Council wishes to contest this, we will fight beside our human friends. The meeting ended badly, with Korzeth storming out and threatening sanctions, arrests, and military action. None of it mattered. Within a month, footage of the battle at Kralon Prime had spread across the galaxy. Independent news networks, which the Council couldn't fully control, ran stories comparing the Council's slow bureaucracy to humanity's rapid response. On Earth, David Chen watched the broadcast from his hospital bed. He was dying, his body finally giving out at age 93, but he was smiling. His nephew Marcus sat beside him, holding the old diplomat's hand. We did it, Uncle David, Marcus said. We proved them wrong. David's laugh was weak but genuine. No, Marcus. We proved them right. They said we were dangerous. They were correct. We're dangerous to their comfortable status quo. We're dangerous to the idea that younger species should accept their place. We're dangerous to 1,000,000 years of stagnation. He squeezed his nephew's hand. And we're just getting started. Across the galaxy, 12 more species formally requested Terran Union protection. The Council's monopoly on galactic security was crumbling. Humanity had emerged from their cage, and the galaxy would never be the same. On Luna Station, Admiral Okonkwo read the latest intelligence reports. The Council was fracturing. Some species wanted to negotiate with humanity. Others wanted war. The Merchants Collective, always pragmatic, was already sending secret envoys to discuss trade agreements. Admiral, her aide said, the hive mind Zixthar is requesting asylum. They say the Council is persecuting them for supporting humanity. Okonkwo nodded. Grant it. And prepare accommodations for their entire species if necessary. Zixthar voted for us 25 years ago. We don't forget our friends. The exile was over. The emergence had begun. And humanity was writing a new story for the galaxy. The Terran Compact was officially founded on a space station called Unity, built in neutral space between human and Kralon territory. Representatives from 47 star systems gathered for the signing ceremony, each bringing their own hopes, fears, and dreams of what this alliance could become. Some were species the Council had rejected. Others were independent worlds tired of paying tribute to distant bureaucrats who offered nothing in return. All of them had one thing in common. They saw in humanity something the Council had forgotten how to be. Ambassador Marcus Chen, David's nephew and now humanity's chief diplomat, stood before the assembled delegates. At 43, he was young for such an important role, but he had learned from the best. His uncle's lessons about soft power and building genuine friendships had shaped Marcus into a diplomat who actually listened to people instead of just talking at them. Today, we're not creating an empire, Marcus said, his voice carrying through the chamber's translation fields. We're creating a partnership. The Terran Compact isn't about humanity ruling over others. It's about all of us standing together as equals. We share technology, resources, and protection. No species is more important than another. We rise together, or we don't rise at all. The Kralon Chancellor Vexthor stepped forward, his crystalline scales catching the light. 3 years ago, my people were dying. The Council debated while we screamed for help. Humanity crossed a line they were forbidden to cross and saved us. Today we stand not as the saved and the saviors, but as friends and allies. The ceremony was beautiful, but the real work was happening elsewhere. In the asteroid belt of the Sol system, Human megacorporations were building infrastructure on a scale that made the Council's economists nervous. Massive shipyards churned out vessels of all types: cargo haulers, colony ships, research vessels, and yes, warships. Lots of warships. But these weren't just human endeavors anymore. Kralin engineers worked alongside human designers. Hive mind workers, each connected to Zixthar's collective consciousness, operated construction drones with perfect coordination. Engineers from a dozen species shared knowledge, combined technologies, and created things none of them could have built alone. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, now 78 and still leading humanity's research division, stood in a laboratory with her counterpart from the hive mind. The insectoid scientist, called Unit 7 Prime, had brought schematics for biological computers that could grow and adapt. Yuki had offered human AI technology and quantum processing systems. If we combine our approaches, Yuki said excitedly, we could create something entirely new. Computers that think and grow like living things but with the speed and precision of machines. Unit 7 Prime's antennae quivered with enthusiasm. The Council forbids such hybrid development. They claim it's dangerous, but I believe they simply fear what we might create. Then, let's show them what we can create when we're not afraid to try new things. The economic impact of the compact was devastating to the Council's established order. For 1,000,000 years, the Merchants Collective had controlled galactic trade through a network of monopolies, tariffs, and complicated regulations designed to keep younger species dependent. The Terran Compact smashed through all of it. Human banks offered better interest rates. Human shipping companies moved goods faster and cheaper, using slipspace routes the Council didn't know existed. Human medical technology, shared freely with Compact members, was decades ahead of what the Council offered at premium prices. Within 5 years, Council-backed corporations were hemorrhaging money, and the Collective's grip on galactic economy was crumbling. The political crisis came to a head at the Council's emergency summit on Sentinel Prime. The chamber where humanity had been rejected 28 years ago was now filled with angry, frightened, and divided Council members. The Valorian Primarch, older now and visibly tired, addressed the assembly. The human question can no longer be ignored. Their compact now includes 200 star systems. Their economy rivals our own. Their technology advances faster than we can track, and their military capabilities are frankly terrifying. A representative from the Merchants Collective, speaking through their crystalline matrix, chimed in. We must negotiate. Economic warfare is destroying our markets. If we don't reach an accommodation, we'll be bankrupt in a decade. But not everyone agreed. A coalition of hardline species, led by the hegemony faction, wanted military action. Their leader, a massive armored being called Rathul, pounded his fist on his console. Negotiate? With primitives who spit on our laws? We should crush them before they grow stronger. Send the full Council fleet, destroy their shipyards, burn their colonies. Remind them why the Council has ruled for 1,000,000 years. The debate raged for weeks. The Council was splitting into two camps, those who wanted to accommodate humanity and those who wanted to destroy them. The Unity Bloc argued for diplomacy, the hegemony faction prepared for war, and then came the incident at Epsilon Forge. Epsilon Forge was a human industrial system, home to massive shipyards and refineries. It was also strategically important, sitting at a crossroads of several major trade routes. The Valorian Empire, seeking to demonstrate strength and intimidate humanity into submission, sent a fleet of 50 dreadnoughts to observe the system. Admiral Jessica Okonkwo, Sarah's granddaughter and now commander of the Terran Defense Fleet, received the news while inspecting a new ship design. At 39, she had inherited her grandmother's tactical genius and her sharp tongue. She also had 300 ships under her command, all equipped with the latest hybrid technologies. So they want to wave their big guns at us, Jessica said to her staff. Let's show them that size isn't everything. The Valorian fleet arrived at Epsilon Forge in a traditional show of force formation. 50 massive dreadnoughts, each 1 kilometers long, each one capable of destroying a planet. They positioned themselves in a sphere around the human shipyards, weapons powered but not activated. The message was clear: we could destroy you if we wanted to. Admiral Okonkwo's response was different. She brought 300 ships, but they weren't arranged in a defensive pattern. They swarmed around the Valorian fleet like angry bees, moving so fast and unpredictably that the ancient aliens' targeting systems couldn't track them all. And then Jessica did something that made her famous across the galaxy. She broadcast a message on an open channel, ensuring every ship and station in the system could hear. Valorian Fleet Commander, this is Admiral Okonkwo. I'm going to explain something to you, nice and slow so you understand. Your 50 dreadnoughts are impressive. They're powerful, heavily armored, and carry enough firepower to crack a moon. Here's the problem. They're also slow, predictable, and commanded by AI systems we've already hacked. On the Valorian flagship, Commander Corthex watched in horror as his own tactical display flickered and displayed something impossible. Human attack patterns, showing exactly how they would destroy his fleet. Approach vectors, weapon solutions, casualty projections. The humans had wargamed the entire battle and were showing him the results. Jessica's voice continued, calm and educational. If you fire on us, my fleet will execute attack pattern Sigma 7. Your point defenses will successfully intercept 32% of our missiles. The remaining 68% will hit your engines and weapon systems. Your dreadnoughts will be crippled in 4 minutes, destroyed in 11. Your estimated casualties 100%. Our estimated casualties 12 ships. That's a pretty terrible exchange rate for you. The Valorian ships held position, but everyone watching knew they had been beaten without a shot fired. Now, I'm going to make this really simple, Jessica said. You can leave. Right now, peacefully, with your dignity somewhat intact. You can report to your Primarch that humans are as dangerous as he feared, and maybe that will convince him that we're better as friends than enemies. Or you can test my math. Your choice, Commander. The standoff lasted 6 hours. In the end, the Valorian fleet withdrew. They had come to intimidate humanity, and instead had been lectured like schoolchildren. Worse, the entire exchange had been broadcast across the galaxy. The Valorian Empire, considered the Council's greatest military power, had just been humiliated by humans who never fired a shot. The political fallout was massive. Within the Council, the Unity Bloc gained strength. 5 species, seeing the writing on the wall, privately approached the Terran Compact about switching allegiances. The Hegemony faction raged about betrayal and weakness, but their arguments rang hollow. And then Zixthar's hive mind made their announcement. Speaking through all their units simultaneously, creating a chorus of millions of voices, they declared their withdrawal from the Galactic Council. For 600 generations, my species served the Council faithfully, Zixthar said. We believed in their wisdom. We trusted their judgment. But we watched them reject humanity out of fear. We watched them cage a species whose only crime was being different. We watched them debate while people died. Today, the hive mind formally requests membership in the Terran Compact. We choose the future over the past. We choose growth over stagnation. We choose humanity. Marcus Chen, receiving the news on Unity Station, felt tears on his cheeks. His uncle David had died years ago, never seeing this moment. But Marcus knew the old diplomat would have the Terran Senate chamber on Unity Station was packed with representatives from 200 star systems. 400 billion beings, human and alien, now lived under the Terran Compact's protection. What had started as humanity's defiant response to exile had become something far greater. An empire in all but name, built not on conquest, but on choice. Chancellor Wei Zheng stood at the podium, her silver hair tied back, her expression solemn. At 68, she had inherited the diplomatic legacy of the Chen family and carried it with grace. Behind her, the flags of 200 systems hung, in careful arrangement, each one representing a world that had chosen to join rather than being forced. 50 years ago, humanity was exiled, Wei Zhang began, her voice carrying through the chamber. We were told we were dangerous, unstable, unfit for civilized space. The Galactic Council built a cage around us and expected us to wither inside it. They made one critical error. They assumed isolation would weaken us. Instead, it focused us, it united us. It made us stronger than they could imagine. The chamber erupted in applause. Humans clapped. Kralins clicked their claws in rhythm. Hive mind units hummed in harmony. A dozen other species showed their approval in their own ways. This was what the Council had never understood. Diversity could be strength instead of weakness. But Wei Zhang's expression remained serious as she continued. However, we must ask ourselves difficult questions. We have built a fleet. We have built an economy. We have built alliances. But what have we truly built? Are we creating something better than the Council, or are we simply becoming what they were, a dominant power that imposes its will on others? The question hung in the air. It was the thing nobody wanted to address directly. The Terran Compact had grown powerful, very powerful. And power, as history showed again and again, could corrupt even the best intentions. On Earth, in a military academy in Geneva, young cadets studied the history of empires. Roman, British, American, Chinese, all had claimed noble intentions. All had eventually prioritized their own power over their stated ideals. The instructor, a grizzled veteran of the Kralon rescue, posed a question to his students. What makes us different? What prevents us from becoming another empire that crushes others beneath its heel? A young cadet, barely 20, raised her hand. Because we remember being crushed. We know what it feels like to be rejected and caged. That memory should keep us honest. The instructor nodded slowly. Should, but memories fade. Your generation remembers the exile. Will your grandchildren? Will their grandchildren? He paused. That's why we need laws, principles, and systems that outlast memory. The crisis came from an unexpected direction. The Valorian Empire, humiliated by the standoff at Epsilon Forge and watching their influence crumble, made a desperate gamble. Their new Primarch, younger and more aggressive than his predecessor, decided that diplomacy had failed. If the Council wouldn't act, the Valorians would act alone. They launched a surprise attack on Terra Nova, a major human colony world in what used to be Council space. 57 dreadnoughts supported by hundreds of smaller craft arrived without warning and began orbital bombardment. Their goal wasn't occupation, it was genocide. They intended to destroy the colony so thoroughly that it would terrify other species away from joining the compact. Admiral Jessica Okonkwo received the distress signal while her fleet was conducting exercises 3 systems away. The words of the frantic controller cut through her like knives. They're killing us. Civilian centers, schools, hospitals. They're not even targeting military installations. Admiral, they're just murdering us. Jessica had been preparing for war for years. She had wargamed dozens of scenarios. She had trained her crews until they could operate in their sleep. But nothing truly prepares you for the moment. When war actually comes, when the training becomes real, when people you know start dying. All ships, she broadcast, her voice cold as deep space. Maximum speed to Terra Nova. Battle condition Alpha. Authorization code Okonkwo 77 Omega. We are at war. What followed would be called the Last War, though nobody knew that at the time. It could have been the first of many. But it ended up being the conflict that finally settled the question of humanity's place in the galaxy. The Battle of Terra Nova brought together the largest fleet engagement in galactic history. Jessica arrived with 2,000 Terran compact ships. The Valorians, having called in every favor and pulled every reserve, fielded 8,000 vessels. On paper, it should have been a massacre. Humanity should have been wiped out. But numbers aren't everything. The human ships, coordinated by the hybrid AI consciousness systems developed by Dr. Tanaka's team, moved like a single living organism. They didn't fight in rigid formations like the Valorians expected. They swarmed, adapted, and improvised. When one tactic failed, they tried another. When the Valorians adjusted their defenses, the humans had already moved to a different approach. The Phoenix-class destroyers equipped with the new drive system were impossibly fast. They struck at Valorian supply lines, communication relays, and command ships. The Valorians found themselves fighting blind, their ancient battle coordination systems unable to keep up with the chaos. And then humanity deployed their ultimate achievement, the synthesis ships. These vessels had no crew in the traditional sense. Instead, they were piloted by consciousness that was neither fully human nor fully artificial. Volunteers had merged their minds with AI systems, becoming something new. Something that could think faster, react quicker, and coordinate more perfectly than any biological mind alone could manage. The ethics of creating such beings had been debated for years. Some called it necessary evolution. Others called it monstrous. But the volunteers had chosen freely. understanding the risks and the irreversibility of the process. And in battle, they were devastating. The fight lasted 3 days. 15,000 ships battled across the Terra Nova system, while millions of colonists huddled in shelters below, praying they would survive. The space above their world became a graveyard of metal, debris, and flash-frozen bodies. When it ended, the Valorian fleet was destroyed. Not damaged, not defeated, destroyed. Of 8,000 ships, fewer than 100 escaped. The Valorian, Primarch's flagship, was captured intact, its commander taken prisoner along with the Primarch himself. The Terran Compact's losses were significant, 400 ships destroyed, tens of thousands of casualties. But they had won, decisively, brutally, in a way that left no doubt about who held military supremacy. Jessica stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the tactical display showing the aftermath. So much death, so much destruction, and for what? Because the Valorians couldn't accept that the galaxy had changed. "Admiral," her communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving surrender signals from 18 Valorian systems. They're asking for terms." Jessica closed her eyes. This was the moment, the decision that would define what the Terran Compact truly was. They could crush the Valorians. They could occupy their worlds. They could do to them what had been done to humanity. Cage them, diminish them, make them irrelevant. Or they could be better than that. "Broadcast this on all channels," Jessica said. "To all Valorian systems, to the remaining council members, to everyone watching. The Terran Compact accepts your surrender. We will not occupy your worlds. We will not impose governments. We will not seek revenge. But we will demand accountability. Those responsible for ordering attacks on civilian populations will face justice, and the Valorian Empire will join the rest of us in building something better than the old order." The Peace of Andromeda was signed 6 months later on Unity Station. The Valorian Empire ceded territory, agreed to demilitarization, and accepted Terran observers to ensure compliance. But they weren't destroyed. They weren't humiliated. They were given a path to redemption. The Galactic Council, reduced to 31 member species and economically irrelevant, officially dissolved. In its place, the Galactic Forum was established, a new organization with the Terran Compact as its most powerful member, but not its ruler. Every species, regardless of size or strength, had a voice. Chancellor Wei Zhang addressed the first session of the forum, speaking not just to the representatives present, but to the entire galaxy watching. "We have built an empire," she said honestly. "Let's not pretend otherwise. The Terran Compact is powerful, wealthy, and militarily dominant, but empires built on force alone are temporary. They collapse under their own weight. So today, we establish the Rights of Sentience Charter, laws that apply to everyone, including humanity. No species may be exiled, no technology may be hoarded, no voice may be silenced, and no empire, including ours, may put itself above these principles." In Geneva, now Earth's capital, Admiral Sarah Okonkwo was buried with full honors. She had died peacefully at age 109, having lived to see humanity transform from exiled outcasts to galactic leaders. Her granddaughter Jessica gave the eulogy. "She used to tell me that the exile was the best thing that ever happened to humanity. I didn't understand when I was young. I thought she was just making the best of a bad situation. But now I understand.